Hello, friend, and welcome to the Spooky Chris podcast. I am Chris Ringler, the aforementioned Spooky Chris, and this is my wee little podcast, so thanks for coming. I am an author, occasional filmmaker, event coordinator, and general ne'er-do-well. You can find my podcasts and my books and all of my movie reviews at spookychris.com, so thanks for coming by. This time around, I figured I would talk about the strange and interesting conundrum movie fans find themselves in kind of an embarrassment of riches, almost, as it were. I've especially noticed this as I've gotten older. You kind of reach a point where you just can't consume as much as you'd like. You realize, and I've always found it fascinating for folks that are like, don't have like lots of hobbies and interests and things, and they're out there. Just how you don't, because there's so much stuff in the world that's interesting, like be it history or music or woodworking, writing, photography, dancing, singing, travel, any of that stuff. I just don't know how you don't have lots of interests. And I mean, maybe people do. My dad would always kind of seem as if he didn't like anything, but he actually did. He was just kind of a gray cloud at times. But as a movie fan, and especially as I've gotten older with a kiddo and stuff, I find it harder and harder to see all of these movies that are coming out. And it's, again, especially hard because, to say we're in a horror renaissance seems kind of silly because I think there's always great stuff that's coming out. It isn't always in the mainstream. It's not always front of mind, and it's not always from the United States. So it's not like we're always looking for it, but it's always out there. During the 80s, people bemoaned those movies and looked back to the 70s and 60s, and in the 90s they looked to the 80s, and on and on and on. Right now the 90s are kind of having a minute. The 90s and 80s, we're still seeing a lot of movies that are aping the 80s, but we're starting to see too kind of a wistful look back to the 90s. So there's always all of the eras are great because they're products of that time and of the artists that are making stuff. So it's always interesting, and there's always good stuff. But right now, it's especially hard because, so the 80s, you had feature films that were coming out, and then you started to have direct-to-video, but more so movies that were finally making their way to home video and to home release, so you didn't have to catch them on a cable channel. And then you started to kind of have made for home release movies, like late in the day. And nowadays you have, streaming services which have all kinds of content, movies and television shows. You have theater stuff, like stuff that's going to the theaters. And then you have all of the old stuff. You have things that are coming to home video in new versions, or that haven't been still released, or they're on new formats that are, finding new eyes. So there's just so much stuff out there. It's hard to kind of catch it all. Like, I don't know, like every year I'll look at the list of the great, and we'll stick with horror, but the great movies and stuff. And if I'm interested in it, and that's always a barrier too, is your interest. If I'm interested, catching up to see it, it takes a minute because I can't really get out to theaters like I did when I was young. Rental is only on, you can only rent really digitally anymore. And so it has to be on a digital platform that you can rent it. And it has to be at a price that you're not, it's funny. As of today, Late Night with the Devil hit Shudder, and it hit rental. And it's like, I'm not going to rent that thing for $15. That's just not happening. So I'll just, I'll wait a little longer, which is fine because like back in the day, you waited, 6 months from the time it hit the theater to when it hit home release. So I can wait. It's a drag, but I can wait. But gosh, there's just so much stuff. And then again, when you get into things that you collect, it's crazy. It's hard to find time to see everything. And, and that's not even delving into the books. Gosh, I haven't finished one of, like many books in a while because I just haven't had time. It's just, I mean, and that's a choice thing. Is I have found as I've gotten older, I focus more because I can multitask. So I'll watch a movie as I'm doing other things. And you can't really do that with a book. If you can, tip of the cap to you, my friend. That is a talent I do not hold. But it's hard because you really are at a point where you kind of have to pick and choose your battles. But honestly, that's probably the way it should be anyways. Because the fact is that few of us are just bleeding time. As a kid, you spend lots of hours like bored. Just because you're still developing and you're developing your interests, you're developing, and you're always kind of thinking, moving, wanting to do things, and whatever you're doing is what you want to do. The thing you can't do. That's just how it is when you're a younger person. As you get older, you kind of have more ability, more freedom to do whatever, within boundaries, whatever you want. You can drive yourself to the movies. You can go to concerts by yourself. You can do all these things, whereas otherwise, you're dependent upon friends or parents or whatever to take you so you can do all those things that you would like to do. So you don't really find yourself necessarily as bored, as it were, as an adult, and so you're just trying, with a finite amount of time that all of us have between work and family and loved ones and this the rest of the world. We really have to be mindful on what we watch. Even if it's just, God knows, I watch lots and lots of just stuff, just nonsense. But it's all nourishment. It's all nourishment for the mind and spirit in one way or t'other. And we just have to be mindful of that. People don't have to agree with what you're watching. It's just a matter of if you're into it or the people you're with and love and whatever. And those are the choices we have to make and the decisions we have to make, and that's kind of it's crazy because I've watched. It's been interesting over the years and stuff. I've watched a lot of like the zeitgeist horror films and shorts and everything. And some of them I'm like, wow, that's amazing, and some of them I just kind of shrug. I'm like, oh, okay, just wasn't for me, which is cool, which is fine. That's not a big deal. Not everything is for every person, but it is interesting to catch those though, to kind of see what is getting the interest now and what's getting people's, tickling their imagination. Because it's always fun to keep up on that. It's depending on what your endeavors are, it's good to keep up on that. Just much like even, Hollywood productions and stuff, it's interesting to see kind of what's coming out and what's new and what the trends are. But yeah, it's been hard because there's so much stuff, especially with streaming television. It's been very hard to really keep up. It feels like you're entering a race where everyone's running and you're trying to jog to catch up to their pace, and you'll never ever catch up. So you're just trying to make up as much ground as possible. And again, there obviously there's worlds beyond just sitting and watching things. This is the example I'm using because it's the one that's most hits closest to home for myself. So that's my focus. So if you're like, whoa, you shouldn't sit around and watch movies all day anyways, well, that's fine. We can all do what we like. That's the joy. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard to finally catch up some of the things, and it's so even harder to watch out for spoilers because we're a culture now that, it's and film and fan discussion, all that is amazing. It's great. It's just a matter of people can't discuss it without in their headlines or like immediately like, here's this one spoiler that'll ruin the whole thing for you. And they throw it out there to get a conversation going. And it's like, but, oh, that wasn't necessary. And it's funny. I've seen people, and I've talked about it, like the whole like, well, spoilers shouldn't matter because if it's a good enough piece of thing, whatever entertainment, it doesn't matter. It should be bigger than the spoiler. Absolutely. But just like it's fun to open your presents that you're given yourself and not have a present in your hand and say, oh, I know what that is. Billy got you a flamethrower, the flamethrower G.I. Joe guy. So that's what that is. And you're like, oh, that's cool. I wanted that. But like, it's nice to kind of, nice to kind of get there yourself. That's why, no, as much as we think we don't really want to know how and when we die, outside of like it'd be nice to set our things to right, man. Unless you can stave it off, like just keep it a surprise. Open that present later. Like, oh gosh, I get to get eaten by a shark. That's awesome. I can't wait. So it's and there's been a lot of things that I have kind of put off because I know too much. And you kind of hope that your brain forgets, frankly, and you're just kind of trying to get your like tap tap tap, just forget about things, and that's happened to me a lot. So there's that too, and it's funny because we're a culture that is on the like is very immediate. Like if like the Stranger Things series hits and it's all barfs out at once and people consume it in one sitting, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this, and they're like talking, and there's not a lot of there's consumption, but not any thought put into it, any digestion, we'll say. So you're kind of just burping out the what you just consumed without really taking the time to kind of interesting. So it gets hard because you're kind of trying to, you may want to watch whatever, but you can't keep pace with people that are just like whatever it is that they are desperate to see and are waiting for, and they consume in one big gulp. And then you kind of have to dodge everybody's spoilers. It's just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, wait, I don't want to know these things. I want to enjoy them on my own, at my own pace, when I can enjoy them. Thank you very much. Goodbye. And it's frustrating because a lot of our media consumption has become that way, where kind of general discussion has gone more to hate it, loved it, it's amazing, I hate it, here's my reaction video, here's this, and it's not a discourse as much as a shouting of opinion. And Lord knows I have big opinions. But it's a great and a terrible time, because it's great because there is so much wonderful stuff out there, and because we have access to international films and shows like we never have before. It's great because we can sample these cultures and this work that we didn't get to really check out before. But it's also frustrating because it's like, oh man, I just want to know. Like, I just want to enjoy this stuff myself on my own time and not feel like I'm the loser that didn't get to watch it. And that's a personal thing that you're like, you just kind of got to get over. But it is rough when, like, literally by the time you get to it, it's like, oh, that's so 2 weeks ago. We're on to this new thing. And the streamers are no help with that because they're so ravenous that they create, expel, move on. So there's no real introspection on their part either. So I mean, all you can do really is try to keep up, try to keep swimming and watch the stuff, consume the stuff that it means something to you and watch, and that you have an interest in. There's a lot of stuff that's coming out that I just don't care about. That if I had all the time in the world, I'd maybe try to check out, but I just don't. So I'd rather watch, listen, read, whatever, the things that I want to. I crossed that bridge a long time ago with reading. Like, it'd be wonderful to read the quote unquote great novels and books and whatever of history. I just don't have that time. And so being that that's the case, I'd rather read what interests me and what's going to make me feel something, good, bad, indifferent, that at least that is nourishing to me, that I'm not forcing myself. It's not the broccoli that I have to force myself to eat because it's good for me. I'd rather decide what's good for me myself. So unfortunately, we will have to leave this great big smorgasbord and all you can eat, wanting more. We'll never ever really get to enjoy it all. I mean, I remember back in the day, I was always like, I just want to live long enough to see the next Scorsese movie, whatever, the next whatever, blah, blah, blah. And that was always my thing. Which, geez, I would have been screwed if I died a while ago. So yeah, you just kind of got to make your own happiness and just kind of follow your path. On a side note, on another track, it was cool over this last weekend. I don't really talk non-bigger issue stuff, but it was cool because I got to do an event again here in, not here, but in Flint with artists and creative and stuff, and it was cool. It's a shame that more people don't support indie shows like this. It's just not a thing folks do. And I don't know what the disconnect with people are, but folks have changed. It's weird. I don't know if it was COVID or what, but it was cool. Being able to do that and giving folks an opportunity to sell their stuff or people to kind of come out and check it out. So that was neat. That's why I do these things, and I've been doing them for so long, is for that kind of fun. And lastly, so 2 retro movies that if you haven't seen are kind of fun to check out. I just recently rewatched Ginger Snaps, and it's such a great werewolf movie. It's a Canadian film from early aughts, and a lot, you see people talk about it as one of the great, especially modern, but one of the great werewolf movies. But I don't know if people check it out because I don't know that it's ever on TV or on streaming or whatever. But it's really good, about 2 sisters who are very dark hearts, and one of them is bitten by a werewolf, and it's them trying to figure out what the heck's going on. And it's really good, really it's very dark but very black comedy at times. Just really, really good, moving, some great performances. And if you haven't seen it, it's absolutely something you should seek out and check out. And the other one I just watched, and I haven't watched this movie in so long, was Redneck Zombies, and it was the first shot on video movie that was released straight to video, and it's super fun for a movie that was from late 80s, shot on video, and it looks terrible. Like even like I had gotten the Blu-ray of it from DeGosser out of curiosity because I had a DVD of it. But I was like, ooh, this is kind of fun. And I don't know that there's much of a difference in the two, frankly, other than maybe some new materials. But it's just a fun movie. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's super gross and weird, dopey humor of a time. You have to go in understanding that it is a product of its time, so it has kind of some offensive jokes and stuff, but not so much so that you have to kind of like cringe, and just like ask yourself why you're on this planet, but more just product of the time. I was surprised about how kind of vanilla the offensive humor was, as it were, but it's a really good gross out horror comedy and a forgotten gem from Troma that, if you can find it, is definitely worth checking out. And that's all I got for you. It's been a minute, but I hope you are well. I may try to do a quick podcast. I don't know. I'm on the verge of 50. I don't know if I have big thoughts about being 50 or not. We'll see, I guess. But my friends, take care. This is your pal Spooky Chris on behalf of Flint's Bigfoot. Which I've never had Flint's Bigfoot on here. Maybe I should introduce or interview Flint's Bigfoot. That might be fun. You can find all my stuff at spookychris.com. I will talk to you soon. I don't know. I don't really have everybody stay weird, stay strange, stay spooky. Keep roller skating?